As entrepreneurs, we get bogged down working in the daily grind, consumed by tasks and putting out fires. But we need to find time to work on the business instead of having the business run you. In this episode, we'll reveal how leveraging virtual assistants gives you that game-changing time freedom. You'll get practical strategies from an expert on delegating effectively to optimize your time working on your business's biggest priorities. We'll cover how to find the right virtual assistant, implement systems, and make sure you're both operating like a well-oiled machine. So get ready and break free from the hustle and run your business deliberately instead of it running you.
This episode of the Lead Machine Growth Show is brought to you by Lead Machine, the step-by-step, tech-easy system for getting leads online. Are you struggling to get leads from your lead magnet? Are you tired of seeing low conversion rates and losing potential customers? It's time to revive your lead magnet and start attracting more leads. Download our free report, 10 Deadly Lead Magnet Mistakes That Are Costing You Leads, and learn how to create a high-converting lead magnet that engages your audience and drives conversions. Don't let common mistakes hold you back any longer. Revive your lead magnet today and download your free report at www.getleadmachine.com/deadly. Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyan, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyan, your Lead Machine host, creator of the Lead Machine Mastermind Group, and I'm dedicated to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream business. And whether you're just starting out or taking your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started. Put these ideas into action. Danielle Julia Cuomo is an award-winning entrepreneur and founder of the Virtual Assist USA, a leading provider of virtual assistant services. She's authored 2 business books, Inspired Entrepreneurs, she's a co-author, and How to Wheel and Deal in High Heels, and I just love that title. She's been featured in many magazines and podcasts and on various high-profile platforms, and I'm glad to have her today. By the way, she's also an official member of Forbes Business Council. Danielle graduated from Pennsylvania State University with a bachelor's and master's in business administration, and she also lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she spends her free time cooking, which I love. I love food, playing guitar, and trying to cross off every item on her bucket list. So let's give a Lead Machine welcome to Danielle. Danielle, thank you so much for coming today. And tell me about the guitar. I'm a musician. I play the drums, and I work with lots of guitar players. So tell us about that.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I am a pretty terrible guitar player, but I do try really hard. I've been playing off and on for about 15 years. So it's a good hobby to have and just kind of clear your head sometimes.
Yeah, and you like cooking. What's your favorite dish to cook?
Italian, of course. Any Italian food.
Right, cool. I have a propensity to Mexican. I just love. We make a Mexican zucchini bowl, which is
Oh, that sounds interesting.
One of our favorite things. Yeah, we can talk recipes later, but let's get into this. How do you identify those tasks that in areas? I mean, I'm a solo entrepreneur, and I don't like to give up control. So how do we know what we can give up control on? And how would we benefit from having assistants help us with that?
Certainly. So I know we had talked a little bit about your audience being solopreneurs, and as solopreneurs, you're often trying to get everything done yourself. You're trying to, be as nimble as possible, as budget conscious as possible. All of those things are really important, really at any stage of your business, or
Yeah.
any size of your business, but I think particularly for solo entrepreneurs. So something that I like to tell folks when they're thinking about, I don't want to let this go, whether it's I don't want to spend money for someone else to do it, or I think I'm the only one that can do this, is I often tell them it's like being left or right-handed. So, for example, if you're right-handed, you may be able to draw, write with your left hand or draw with your left hand. You might be perfectly capable of it, but it's not going to be as good as when you write with your right hand. So it comes down to just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And so, what I tell a lot of my clients is yes, they can certainly do their bookkeeping, their social media posts, they can answer customer service emails, they can answer the phone, respond to communications, develop content, all of those things. Certainly, if you're a solopreneur, you've got to this place because you're very intelligent, you're very talented, you're driven, so you're capable of all those things. But should you be doing that? Is that where you should be spending your time, or should you be focusing on business growth, revenue growth, thinking about the vision and the direction that you want your company to go? So ultimately, what to keep in mind is just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah. And one of my mentors, his name is Ben Gay the Third. He's the premier salesman. He's just fabulous at that. And what he says is stay in your lane. I can hear him saying that to me right now. And so, and that's the point. You can do all these things. And I have a client who doesn't really like the marketing part. She likes the doing, the healing.
Yeah,
She's a healer. So she likes that, but she doesn't like the marketing. But she needs to market, and she is a solopreneur, and she just does not like to do that. She doesn't like social media. And so that would be something that you could pick out and outsource, because there's lots of people out there that love to do that and are capable of doing that for you, right?
yeah, and I think Paul, you made a good point as well. We were talking about sort of letting go of control and wanting to do everything yourself, but sometimes there are things that you just don't like to do, but they are necessary for your business. So some people, for example, they just might not love social media. They want to stay off of it. But today, increasingly, it's important for your business to have a presence on social media,
Yeah.
not only to drive leads, drive traffic, but just for credibility and recognition. Or you might not like to do bookkeeping. And so you might sort of push it to the wayside because it's your least favorite task. But it's a really important task. And so that is something that you could outsource, so that your books are in order, everything is aligned, and you're not just pushing it to the wayside because you just don't love to do it.
Yeah, and putting it off is not a good idea, because you really do need to know your numbers, especially
Yeah,
if you're on a tight budget. You really need to have the numbers. You need to have trust in the people that you're outsourcing to, also.
sure.
But I think that it's important to, even though you might not like it, there are certain things that you've got to pay attention to the fundamentals as you grow your business. So
Yes.
outsourcing it and doing those things are made. So that kind of points us into the direction of having a system, or some sort of way that you can monitor it, yet you don't have to do all the things that are necessary. Is that something that you also agree with? And what's your response to creating systems?
Yeah, so I love systems and processes. I think that's really something that anyone can put into place. It's also something that if you're not great at it, but it is something that your business does require, a really skilled virtual assistant can do that for you, help create an SOP or standard operating procedures, can help you create those systems so they can be replicated in your business. So again, not something to put off just because you don't like to do it. It is something you can outsource and have that done as well.
Right, and a good VA, or a good VA service provider, should be able to walk you through those things and help you to create those SOPs, so that, because a
Yes,
lot a lot of people don't have the first idea of how to teach someone to do what they do or what they need to do.
exactly.
So that's really a valuable um, thing that can be offered to that. So let's talk about that relinquishing of control though for a minute. Is there a certain mindset shift, and do you coach people through that? Because I bet you have conversations with lots of business owners who really just don't want to do it.
Yeah, I would
That's a
say that
big thing
um,
for me.
a lot of our clients come to us and they wanted a virtual assistant like yesterday. They
Yeah.
sort of come to us when they're so bogged down that they need to get started right away. Um, there's other times where folks will maybe have heard of virtual assistants, or they have folks and friends in their mentoring groups and colleagues that have talked about it, and they're like, yeah, this sounds good. I would love to outsource and delegate, but they're really reluctant to do that. So you do have to have a lot of trust and a strong relationship with your virtual assistant. It's a very personal relationship with your VA. So I think there's a couple of things to look at there. First is making sure that you're matched up to the right VA. So in
Mm.
some companies, like in my company, for example, we do personality and work behavior testing with our VAs, like the DISC assessment or Colby assessment. That helps us to just understand their style and how they work best, how they communicate best, and can match them with the right client. So when you're looking at a VA, don't just look at their skill set. Of course, that's important, but just make
Yeah.
sure that it's going to be a good style match that you have complementing work behavior styles. And secondly, start slow. So I think there is a tendency, especially when you're working with a virtual assistant that can do a lot of things, to say, okay, I want, my social media done, email triage, my appointment scheduled, all of those things. And not to talk ourselves out of getting work, but it is important to start slow because that's where you really start to build that trust and credibility. And if you can work with your virtual assistant on a few projects in the beginning, that's just sort of a natural extension and that will happen. And then you'll feel more confident in really thinking of it like a partnership and partnering them with them in that sense. And so those are two big tips, I would say.
Yeah, and there's for me, I've worked with small companies, startups, and they become very big. Uh, and one of the companies that I worked with uh, 20 years ago, we went from less than a million to almost 50 million
Wow.
till I left, or when I left. And one of the things that really struck me then, and I've seen this in so many times since then, is that when a company grows, they get to a certain point, and there's this core values, this how I want to be treated, how I want to treat you, how I want to treat my vendors, how I want to treat my customers, and I might have Judeo-Christian values. I might have uh, certain values that I want to make sure that my customers or my clients are treated a certain way. And there comes a point in every company where they grow from that small to big, especially if they grow too fast, they tend to lose that. And I teach a rotational system where you examine your goals and is this decision going to affect or come into contact with maybe compromising one of those goals or one of those virtues or one of those values. And how do we instill that into our processes and teach our VAs so that they understand where you're coming from?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think it's important to be upfront about that. So when we're talking about, I was saying that a lot of our clients or prospective clients will come to us and they needed a VA 6 months ago. They're really bogged
Yeah.
down. That's an okay place to be in, but sometimes that can cause you to rush into things. And so
Mhm.
if you spend that time, especially in the beginning, not only in your initial conversations, but a regular cadence of meetings. So I always recommend VAs and clients to meet live, so on the phone or Zoom at least once a week. I know it can be hard to have another meeting scheduled, but it really is important. And spending that time communicating those values to your VA, why it's important to you, and talking about the background of it and what that means for the future of your business. So rather than just saying to the VA, when you're doing customer service emails, I want you to do these 3 steps with that, talking about why those 3 steps are important to you. This is because step 1 is because one of my values is treating my clients like family members, and so on and so forth. And so just taking that time to give that additional detail is important. I think it's important with any employee-employer relationship, but particularly when you're working with a virtual assistant, because it is remote. And so you kind of have to take a little bit more time in those cases to get those things done, but it really is worth it.
Yeah, and that does take time, but even if you don't use a VA and you're hiring people, it's the same thing. You really do need to have those conversations and spend the time on that. And that reminds me of Ray Kroc when he was creating McDonald's. He bought that hamburger station so many years ago, and he was a guy who was a genius. And he, instead of working in his business, he was working on his business so he could replicate it, franchise it, and then, as you know, McDonald's is worldwide, and you can buy a French fry in Russia or in China or in Iowa, and it's going to taste the same. Now there might be sushi or something else on the menu too, but some regional things. But you're gonna find that same taste. So I think that's super important. And so we're talking about what about the skills and qualities that you would need to have in a VA that would match your goals and your skill set and all those things that you need.
So I think first, not only thinking about where you are now, but where you want to go. So as an example, we talked about social media being a task that a virtual assistant can do for you. Maybe right now you have a very limited or even a non-existent social media presence, or it's just not where you want to be. So you might not be thinking necessarily about a VA that has those social media skills because you might be focused more on admin. But if thinking about where you want to go in the future does include a social media strategy, including that in your search for the virtual assistant now. So thinking about not only what types of tasks you're doing now, but what types of tasks will you be needing as your business grows. Most business owners I know don't want to stay at the same revenue level, the same size forever.
Right.
They have goals, they have dreams. So thinking about where you think your business will be at the end of the year, maybe in 2 years, and what types of tasks you'll need done then, what type of role you'll have a need for then, and think about the virtual assistant that you want to hire for that that place in your business. And then that way you can hire them now and maybe you can get there even faster.
Yeah. And what does that process look like that you help them do?
Yeah. So when you're looking for a virtual assistant, I think it's important to have a list of the platforms that you use in your business. So that can be you're on Google Workspace, you use Asana, you use Zoom, you use QuickBooks, you use FreshBooks, whatever platforms you use in any area of your business. It's important to at least have a list of that so that you can make sure that, yes, your virtual assistant checks all of those boxes. For most people, time zone is a consideration, having a VA in your time zone. Occasionally, we will see clients that want a VA outside of their time zone, specifically so they can have a larger reach for like customer service inquiries and that sort of thing. But in general, you're looking at time zone. You also want to think about the personality traits. So if you are someone who is really big picture and a visionary, as many entrepreneurs are, the entrepreneurs that I've met are, you want someone that is not the same as you, but someone that can complement that. So in that case, maybe you need someone that is really good at the nitty gritty details, that doesn't miss a thing. That way you can say, this is my vision for the business. This is what I want to be doing in 6 months. And then that virtual assistant can say, and these are the 64 steps that we need to get there. And I'm not going to miss a detail of it or miss a step of it. So thinking about who you are as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a person, what your business values are, and someone that can complement that as well. And then, of course, it's also important to talk to the virtual assistant or the virtual assistant company about some things that aren't as fun to talk about, but they are important. So things like security and privacy and confidentiality, and just making sure that all those boxes are checked too. But those other things are really important points to make sure that you have prepared.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about some of my clients and myself included. I said, yeah, some of them they know those things, and some of them need to be brought up to a level where they can outsource. So is that something that you should look for assistance with also with a provider? Because just saying, okay, here's the boxes you need to check, but I don't know how to check those boxes. And by the way, I'm too busy to check the boxes. So how do you address that problem?
Yeah, I think that as a good entrepreneur, you have to know what you don't know, and you have to
Yeah.
be open to asking the provider, potential provider, what questions am I not asking? What are things that other entrepreneurs that are at my stage in business have asked? What are things that I need to know about? That also gives you an opportunity to just see how much the virtual assistant knows, where their knowledge base is. And so just by asking them, what am I missing? What questions am I not asking? You can really get a sense for how it would work with you as well.
Yeah. That seems like a struggle that most people are going to run into.
Yes, I've
Beyond
seen that.
beyond the giving up of control. So what about tools and technologies? We talked a little bit before we started recording about AI and other tools and technologies. You mentioned Asana, and there's Monday, there's Trello, there's all kinds of different platforms that are manage tasks. Seems like you would really want to have something like that so that you could manage the engagement. Can you talk about tools and technologies that would help to make this transition smoother?
Yeah, so I think there's really two distinct pieces here that we can talk about. So one is tools and one is technologies. So as far as tools, that could be like a CRM system, like a Salesforce or a HubSpot, and a project management system. That could be Teamwork, Monday.com, Asana. There's tons of different ones. If you don't have one, that's okay. It can actually be preferred in some cases because then you can work with the virtual assistant to get it set up in the most automated, efficient way that's
Yeah.
specific and customized to your business. If you do have one, though, it is important to match with a virtual assistant that has expertise in that area, like if it's Zoho, for example, because there's all sorts of um, intricacies and different sorts of tips and tricks and shortcuts for different platforms. And the more you know about the platforms and how robust they can be, the more efficient they can be for you and they can work for you. Um, and so, in addition to that, talking about technology, so everyone's sort of talking about AI these days and
Mhm.
GPT being a big one.
Yeah.
And I think having a virtual assistant that knows how to use AI as a complementary piece to their work is important. So, one thing is it can get done a lot faster with the help of AI, but knowing when to use it specifically, knowing where it makes mistakes, where it makes sense, where it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And helping you to sort of navigate through that. So it certainly can save you time, it can save you money, but you want someone that knows what they're doing so you don't mess that up.
Yeah, because many entrepreneurs they're content creators. They're creating courses, they're
Yes,
creating books and things like that, and they need editing assistance, they need grammar assistance. I use Grammarly like every single day.
me
Just
too. Yes,
I love Grammarly, and
yes,
I love how they send you those little email notices and said you've boy you're being productive. You're 97% more productive than other users, and we've looked at 20 million words or whatever it is. So
yeah.
I just love that. But yeah, you're right. Having an assistant that knows how to use AI, but doesn't lean on it to make it, you just don't spit out whatever AI puts out. It's more of assistant. So it's a tool that they can
Yeah.
use to help you be more productive.
Yeah, I would say like to use Grammarly as an example. It's a great tool for editing, um, copywriting, or I'm sorry, copy editing. And now they do have the ability to create content for you and write content for you.
Yeah.
And so That's something that can be done in seconds. But the important thing there would be if you had a virtual assistant that could help you with knowing what prompts to write and knowing how to use it. So knowing the exact prompts to use to create content that doesn't sound so AI generated.
Yeah.
That would be something that your VA, could help you with.
Yeah. And it sounds like you might have AI or assistants that do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we do work with Grammarly, ChatGPT, or some big ones in the past year or so.
Yeah.
And there are some limitations, but it can be used to make things a lot more efficient.
Yeah. The funny thing is we've been using AI for many, 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 many years. And we just didn't, it wasn't called that, but the spell checker. I was using AI when Microsoft Word came out in the 80s.
Yes,
There's a spell checker and a thesaurus and a grammar checker. So we've been using it for a long
exactly.
time. So and it's changing so fast. So what about compensation? There are people there are agencies that are offshore, and
Mhm.
some of them are fabulous. Some of them really do a great job. But there's that time zone thing, and there's also the culture differences. Can you talk about that offshore
Yeah.
versus?
So when you're looking offshore, these days you can get a VA offshore. And when I say offshore, I'm referring to India or the Philippines, most recently Colombia. There's been some developments there
Yeah.
with virtual assistants. Sometimes you can get them for $5 or $10 an hour. And of course, that's not something that you would, see here in the US with our, minimum wage, less cost of living, all that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely pros to using going offshore at times. I would say when like security and sort of compliance, privacy, when that's not necessarily an issue to you, or it's not a concern for a particular project. Maybe it's a data mining project, for example, or just some research that you can define really well so that there's not a language or cultural barrier. It can be great to use offshore for that. So you can be looking in the $5 or $10 an hour range. If you're looking at a US based company, whether it's an individual freelancer, so you're just working one on one with someone that runs their own, solo consulting practice, or an agency, you're looking at between 35 and 45 an hour. So that's a consideration to make
Mhm.
too. Most people that will go with a US that are seeking out a US based company or US based individual specifically, they're doing so because maybe they want to keep jobs here in the US. Maybe it's
Mhm.
because it involves a lot of communication and they can't risk any sort of language barriers or cultural barriers. Maybe it's because of security or privacy concerns and that sort of thing. I will say, I know you mentioned the time zone. Generally, lately, what I've seen is that a lot of the offshore companies will work US time. So basically, they'll work overnight their time,
Yeah.
which would be the daytime, our time. And so that hasn't been as much of a hindrance in the past few years for offshore companies, but there are still a lot of considerations to think about.
Right. And what about contracts and those kinds of things where you're tied in for a specific time, or there's hourly, or how does that work,
Yeah,
and what are some
I would
tips to take advantage of it, doing it the best way?
Yes, so I would say to look for a company that is flexible with that.
Hmm.
You definitely don't want to be locked into working with the same company or the same VA for months at a time, like having some type of cancellation clause that can be really limiting. And if the relationship isn't working, you don't want to be stuck. So I would look for a company that has that flexibility, that is flexible just because they want to earn your business and not just sort of be stuck into a contract. But of course, you want to look for a company that has non disclosure agreements, practices to keep your information safe, confidentiality, that they're not going to disclose any proprietary information, that the work that the virtual assistant does on your behalf is owned by you. That's your IP, your work, you own the final product. So those are some things to be looking out for with contracts as well. So how flexible is the contract? Can I cancel at any time? Is it month to month? Are there rollover hours? That sort of thing. And then, of course, the security and privacy and intellectual property is important too.
That's a good point. So where would one start to where would one start this journey? I mean, it looks like maybe you certainly have had a lot of experience running an agency for this, but you're using them too, aren't you? Aren't you using virtual assistants?
Yeah, so I use my team of VAs to do all sorts of tasks for me. So now most of my job is involved in the operations and the sales of the business, and then I have VAs that help manage the team, manage the day to day work, manage the bookkeeping, social media, correspondence, invoicing, all of those things. But it's not something that happens overnight. It's definitely something that you grow to use. And I think if you are utilizing a VA and you're using them in the right way, you can get a really good, strong ROI on those services, and then be making more money in your business, and then be able to hire more folks to help, or hire the same folks to do more tasks for you, and free up that time. So it's all sort of a domino effect, if you will.
Okay. And so you've got this established, and to establish this, where would you start if you aren't really sure? Where would you, what would be the first thing you did? You said starting slow earlier. What would be the first thing you would do to start
Yeah, so I would
incorporating
talk
VAs?
to a few different virtual assistant companies. You can simply Google, best VA companies in the US if you want to go onshore or offshore. But I would talk to at least two, maybe three virtual assistant companies. Of course, a good virtual assistant is going to do all the things that we talked about. They'll be all-inclusive services. They'll be flexible. They'll have security practices. They'll be able to guide you to delegation, to setting up processes, to setting up systems, all of those things. But I would interview a few companies just so that you can find the sense for who you work best with from a personality standpoint. So we talked a little bit about it being a really personal relationship, and it is. And so if you have an opportunity to talk to two or three VAs, because it is a very important hire, I think that can make all the difference too.
Yeah, and I think some agencies they assign, they don't really have that where you can talk to who you're going to be working with, and I've seen that. I've seen it both ways, but I like the idea of being able to talk to, because just having a face to face like we're having, you can tell if we can understand each other, and we're kind of on the same level. You understand my vision, and that kind of thing. That's super important. So how do we know that they're being effective? And are there certain measurements that you suggest that entrepreneurs put into place when they're considering working
Yeah,
with
so
AI?
I think being upfront about your budget and expectations is important. So if you have a research project for a virtual assistant, for example, if you are looking at, let's think of the research project is take a look at our 10 biggest competitors. Tell me what their pricing is. Tell me what they're doing great, what they're doing poorly at, how their social media presence is. Tell me all these things. Your virtual assistant could take 10 hours to do that, or they could take 2 hours to do that, depending on how much information you want. And so I think being upfront about your expectations with the timing too is important. So a better way to delegate that would be, say, take 2 hours, research these 10 competitors, give me the information at the end of the 2 hours, and then we can assess together how much more time is needed, if more time is needed, if we want to, dive into a certain specific area of that research. So thinking about it like that, not just assuming that your VA can read your mind. And so a good VA, as you work together for many months and years, can kind of start to do that. But at the beginning, when you say, I want this research done, being specific about your time constraints too. Make sure that your VA, that you have access to your VA's timesheets. So whether they send that to you on a weekly basis or you see it in a portal, so that you can see where they're spending time. So like in our company, our timesheets would say, competitive research, research these 5 things, and it took me an hour and 37 minutes. And then you can really see where your money is going. And that's an important consideration too.
Yeah. of course, there's a dollar figure attached to that, but that's really no different than if you had a direct report or an employee doing that for you. You'd run into the same thing, but that employee is working for you full time, possibly, but you still need to manage expectations. So it's really not any
Yeah.
different. And many entrepreneurs have been in the corporate world, or they've, maybe this is their second act, so they're familiar with doing those kinds of things, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I would say it's very similar to managing someone that is a direct report or an employee of yours if you've done that in the corporate world before. One difference and one benefit, though, is that you're not paying for the VA's downtime. You're only paying for
Yeah.
what they work. So if you're hiring someone in the corporate world, for example, and they're there 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, maybe they're only working 6 hours a day or 5 hours a day
Yeah.
on their work. And the rest of the
Yeah.
time, they're chit chatting or it's just sort of downtime,
Getting
surfing
coffee.
social media or whatever. But when you are working with a virtual assistant, you are paying for exactly the work you're doing and only that. You're not paying for breaks or paid time off or vacation, that sort of thing. So that's a consideration too. In other ways, it's very similar, but that is one big distinction.
Yeah. And so in your experience, or what have some of your clients, you know, I'm sure you've got some clients who've had some real benefits from doing this. Can you tell us some success stories that can kind of inspire us to say, hey, let's explore this. This sounds like this could really work for me.
Certainly. So I think the biggest thing is just business growth. So especially for solo entrepreneurs, because you can't do everything yourself, just to be able to say, if I had someone answering my emails for 10 hours a week and scheduling my meetings and doing competitive research and looking to generate leads for me and doing my social media, how much more could I be in front of prospective clients or prospective customers, doing things like podcast interviews, just getting yourself out there and what that would mean for your revenue. So that's really where we see the success with our clients is folks that are saying, well, before I only had 3 hours a week to focus on selling, and now I have 30 hours a week to focus on selling. And so their revenue goes through the roof. But other people, it's not necessarily about the revenue. It can be just about wanting to spend more time with loved ones. Maybe they have a passion project that they have finally got to work on, spending more time with their family, being able to take a vacation, all of those things. So there's different ways that our clients have defined success, but they've been able to meet them in those different ways.
Can you share a story?
Yeah, I think one story that particularly comes to mind is a client of mine that he's been a client for about 12 years now. His name's Robert. We've been together almost since the beginning, and he has a coaching business. And something that was really important to him was growing the coaching business, as a solo entrepreneur, but being able to do it exponentially. So not just having, the one-to-one sort of selling his hours for time model and
Yeah.
just being able to scale it. And so since we started working together, he has been able to completely scale that. So he has a team of virtual assistants that help manage the sales calls and the introductory calls and onboarding everyone, welcoming them, doing the operations, answering emails, sending out the invoices, and he can just focus more on doing the marketing, which is what he loves, like the big events, the live webinars, that sort of thing. And the team of VAs can be in the background. And so I think that's a specific story, but that can apply to many different clients, many different industries.
Yeah. And did he stay one-on-one, or did he go to a group model, or kind of a both hybrid sort of thing?
Yeah, he's in a group model now.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with, when I meet them, they are one-on-one, and they aspire to have a group, but they can't really get there because of the outsourcing of tasks. Those tasks that they're doing, they're producing their own podcasts, they're creating their own courses, they're doing their own social media, they're paying the bills, they're doing all those things. And they never get around to saying, oh, I need to create this course and this mastermind group so that I can do a group coaching program. So that's a really big benefit of being able to outsource some of those tasks and being able to focus on that. that revenue creation and just putting the model together so that you can go out and do that. So that's
Exactly.
a huge benefit. So
Exactly.
yeah. So is there anything else that I've missed that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think one thing that we didn't talk about is just sort of ongoing feedback with your virtual assistant. So
Okay.
we talked about a lot about starting up, selecting the right virtual assistant, how you do that, but the ongoing feedback and ongoing relationship building is really important. A good, strong virtual assistant is going to want that feedback, possibly solicit that feedback from you,
Mhm.
and don't be afraid or shy away from giving constructive feedback. I think a lot of people sometimes think of it as a negative thing, but it's really not. If you tell a good virtual assistant, no, I saw the way you did this research and I prefer that you did it, this way, and this way. A good virtual assistant wants to hear that because they want to please you. They want to have a satisfied customer, and they're not going to know that unless you share that feedback with them. So, if it's something that you're a little uncomfortable with, which a lot of people are, I think scheduling regular times to give that feedback is really helpful. So, that it's on the calendar, the VA knows that it's on the calendar. It's 15 or 20 minutes that you're doing, once a month just to run over what worked, what didn't, what can we improve upon. That's going to help you and the virtual assistant. So I think thinking about that as an ongoing relationship is an important tip as well.
Yeah, and I think if you do that and you consider the tasks that you're giving them, or there might be a project, like you said, we mentioned research projects. If you tie that feedback to that project, to that task, it's a lot easier as an entrepreneur to remember what it was, your feedback that you did have on that. Because if you wait a month, you might forget things. And I know I'm
Yes,
forgetful. I need to be reminded. So having that right in front of you, I mean, maybe on your Asana board or whatever, your project manager, you can go and review that with your virtual assistant, and
exactly.
that's where those things can bubble to the surface. Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, what is your favorite Italian dish to cook for your family? This is
My
really
husband would,
important, and you don't outsource
I
this.
understand. My husband would say that his favorite thing that I cook is chicken piccata. So I would say that.
Chicken piccata. And what makes the piccata? What makes
Well,
it
there's a
piccata?
secret ingredient, but I will
Uh-huh.
share with you that the secret ingredient is putting paprika on the chicken before
Ah,
you tenderize the meat.
nice. I love my paprika on my potato soup.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Now, my favorite Italian dish is chicken parm,
Oh, yes.
and I have
That's a big one.
I stack little uh, crisscrosses of different kinds of cheese on top of it, after I've flattened it, and
Oh, that
so
sounds yummy.
and I use some tomato sauce and stuff, and it's my only Italian dish that I know how to make. But my wife
That's
says
okay
it's
as
the
long
best.
as
My
you do
wife
it
says
well.
it's the best one that she's ever had. So, well,
I like
thank you.
that with the different kinds of cheese.
Yeah, yeah, and I learned that from it just randomly on the internet, a recipe. I said, "Oh, that looks good," and I tried it and went, "Wow, that's
And it
really good."
was.
So, well, thank you, Danielle. I appreciate it. As we wrap up, what are three things that our listeners can do today to put these ideas into action?
So, one thing that I think would be important is to, if you are interested in hiring a virtual assistant, make a list of two or three companies or two or three VAs that you can talk to and have a sense for. Um, just if they vibe with you, if it's a good connection, a good personality fit. Two, make a list of where you want to be in the future, not just where your business is today, but think about 6 months from now, think about the end of the year, where you want to be when we start 2025. And then third, I would think about just sort of internally being able to let go of some things and know that maybe there's someone that can do something better or even just faster or cheaper than you can do yourself with your
Mhm.
own time and how much your time is worth and valued about, and think about that when you're considering hiring a virtual assistant as well.
Yeah, I think in having a good idea of how much your time is worth is super important. If you're doing $10 an hour work, then you should say, "Oh gosh, I could." it'd be great if I didn't have to do that. Or, maybe you enjoy doing if you enjoy doing $10 an hour of work, you probably don't want to market yourself. And so you need to give that
Yes,
up and start focusing on growing your business and working on your business instead of in it. And
100%.
a lot of us fall into that trap. We say, oh, I need to do this. And I know I can just do this. I'll just whip it out. It'd be so much easier if it'd be harder to explain it than to do it, and you come into that trap. But if you do it over and over again, that's perfect.
It
Perfect
is.
way to
Yes.
assess something that you can outsource. Well, Danielle, how can people connect with you? And I know they can reach out to you at your website. It's www.virtualassistusa.com. But what else? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, they can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn very often. So
Mhm.
it's just under my name, Danielle Julia Cuomo. And I know you had mentioned our site. And so we had a gift for your listeners. We talked a little bit about AI. And so we developed an AI guide that we have on our website. It's for sale for about $40, but we did want to give it to your listeners as a gift. And so
Nice.
it's right on the homepage of our website, virtualassistusa.com. And then the password for that would be VA Client 24. That will make the cost zero and they'll be able to get it. It's a digital download, and they can review that and just learn a little bit more about how AI can work with a human virtual assistant or even just themselves as well.
Okay, so that's www.virtualassistusa.com. And then the coupon code, right, is VA Client
VA Client 24.
24. Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Danielle. I appreciate meeting you. Nice meeting you and talking with you.
Yes.
And remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So put the pedal to the metal. I'm Paul Guyan. And until next time, and Danielle Julia Cuomo, thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyan, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.